clarity, clarity, clarity. I often say to people, especially the leaders that I'm coaching, remove ambiguity, remove ambiguity, remove ambiguity. And when you've done that, go back and remove some more ambiguity, because it's there all the time. And the brain really hates ambiguity just in the day-to-day. It actually takes a lot of what we call cognitive energy. And you don't want your people spending cognitive energy on trying to make sense of the culture in the business. Can I say that to that person, but not another person? Or even just clarity around role and I guess kind of the next steps as well. You know, what is the next steps in their career? Often we see people say, oh, this person thinks they're ready for that, but they're really not. And I'm like, well, have you had a conversation as to exactly what that looks like for them and what the expectations would be, and what is your perception of where they currently are at?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited about having Vanessa Bennett as our guest today. She is the CEO of Next Evolution Performance, which is a global high-performing coaching business. And it uses neuroscience to help leaders that are very driven to make sure that they can optimize their profitability, their productivity, and also their energy, all these things that are very, very important in what we do. And the aim of that is when we do that engagement, that there's less sickness, there's less burnout, and less mental health, right up my alley. And so over 10 years, Vanessa's been helping hundreds of leading financial services, legal and accounting firms, construction companies, and private schools. And they've done this work across 10 countries. And some of the results that they're getting is that they're getting their productivity lifts by over 25%. The profitability has gone up minimum 10, sometimes up to 30%, etc. Vanessa's also got experience in the financial services and health and fitness industry for over 20 years. She is also a group fitness instructor. She's also got a master's in psychology and neuroscience, and the list goes on. Vanessa, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shivani. Great to be here.
And so when you've done so many things, one of the first questions I always have for our guest, Vanessa, is that some of those moments where things could have gone completely the other way, what were some of those transformational moments in your life, if you've got one or two, that have really defined and created you into who you are? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think probably the main thing for me was actually when I was working in financial services. And I was there for a long time. I was head of a sales team for Australia and New Zealand. Now, think back to the global financial crisis, and things were going quite swimmingly up until about 2008. Come 2008, it was a whole different picture. Markets fell a lot. Selling equities was a lot harder during that time. And I think that was a very challenging time for basically anyone working in financial services. I think to see really good people were losing jobs, not in the company that I was working with, thank goodness, but it was rife across the industry. And to sort of add insult to injury, in 2007, I had just bought a house on my own. So I had a very large mortgage. And I was also in that situation of like, well, you know, if things go awry and I lose my job, I'm actually in a little bit of a pickle. So, you know, it was kind of going to be my grandmother's third bedroom, I think, was the moral to that story. So luckily, I think one of the things that we made sure that we did was, you know, really focused on looking for the reasons why this was going to work. And rather than focusing on, okay, I get that the worst case is not a great situation, but let's put everything into channeling the energy to what we need to do to actually get a best case out of that. And the best case is we hit all of our targets. We look like rock stars. It's something we can, you know, keep on the CV for a long time. And I think that's probably still a defining moment now. That could have gone really horribly awry. But I think that's just a function of mindset is really everything. And leading teams around that time, you know, you need to make sure that you're keeping their mindset up as well. And so I'm actually really proud of what we achieved during that time. And that could have been a really, well, it was a massive challenge, but it could have definitely gone either way. And luckily it went the right way.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, like you said, if it had gone that way, you know, what are some of the things that would have happened? Vanessa, you spend a lot of time engaging people in your own businesses and what you do, and would love to get a couple of tips. You know, what are the things that you've found either yourself or you've seen other people in terms of engaging others?
Yeah. So I think one of the first ones is that's really resonating with a lot of people these days is listen to understand. So many people are just listening to jump in to solve a problem or to change someone else's mind, which neuroscientifically is not really a thing. They need to change their own mind. Um, and I think, and this is probably something that I had to learn over the years as well. This wasn't something that came naturally to me. So I think listen to understand where the other person's coming from. They will have a lot of different ideas, but also different belief systems just based on some of their experiences. And often we can learn a lot from that. So I think that's definitely, one of the first things. I think when it comes to managing a team as well, or even just working together in a team, clarity, clarity, clarity. I often say to people, especially the leaders that I'm coaching, remove ambiguity, remove ambiguity, remove ambiguity. And when you've done that, go back and remove some more ambiguity because it's there all the time. And the brain really hates ambiguity just in the day to day. It actually takes a lot of what we call cognitive energy. And you don't want your people spending cognitive energy on trying to make sense of the culture in the business. Can I say that to that person, but not another person? Or even just clarity around role and I guess kind of the next steps as well. What is the next steps in their career? Often we see people say, oh, this person thinks they're ready for that, but they're really not. And I'm like, well, have you had a conversation as to exactly what that looks like for them and what the expectations would be? And what is your perception of where they currently are at? So I think when we run this in workshops for teams, there is just ambiguity everywhere. And we still get this in our business. Sometimes it's like something goes slightly left of center and it's like, oh, I guess, yeah, actually that was ambiguous. My bad. So and because quite often when it's really clear in our minds, that doesn't mean it's clear in everyone else's minds. So people aren't mind readers, right? So I think that's a big thing. And then I think as far as for really engaging people as well, one of the other things is accountability. And we want to make sure that people are not just accountable to get stuff done, but also really accountable to themselves. And I prefer to take that even further to say self-responsibility. So, this idea of like, oh, people leave bad bosses and things like that. And I'm like, well, how much responsibility are we giving people to speak up, to ask for what they need, to ask what would be good for them in the next phase for them? And I think the more that we can really sort of get that self-responsibility to other people, then it becomes a two-way street. Leadership's hard and leaders, quite frankly, aren't mind readers. So how do you create an environment where people can really take their career by the horns, make sure that they have responsibility for that and ask for different things that they need from their leaders as well. So accountability to make sure that everyone's delivering and is very clear on what needs to be done by when, why, how, what's being done, etc. But then also just that self-responsibility, which is more of a mindset, right? It's more of this idea of thinking there is always a solution and I will find it, rather than here's my problem, somebody else fix it for me.
Absolutely. And I think when you spoke about clarity, I was just going, it's almost that macro and that micro level, right? So we're wanting, sometimes people are really good at one or the other, but it needs that constant conversation. And the clearer people are, the clearer they know what to do. Now, just sort of switching a little bit, Vanessa, and talking about your learnings in business, like, you've been in business for a long time, you obviously help a lot of other businesses. So what are a couple of, and I know this is such a hard question when you've had so many learnings, but what are a couple of really important learnings that you've had in terms of running a business for the people that are listening and watching? Often they're going, I'm a business owner. What are the learning things that I can take out of this particular podcast?
Gosh, Shivani, I feel like I keep learning every day. I think someone described running a business as kind of assembling the plane as you jump off the cliff. And I pretty much feel like that even to this day. So I think one of the first things is actually get help. So I'm a big believer in coaching of all types. I'm a group fitness instructor. I have a personal trainer. We have business coaches. We have basically there's so many other experts on all that kind of stuff out there. There's no point me spending cognitive energy on trying to do that. So I think a lot of that is actually just get help rather than try to spend energy on figuring that out for yourself and making sure that you're only doing what only you can do. So hiring people before you feel ready, and maybe even before you feel you can afford them in, especially when you're running a business. I get what it's like to kind of start from scratch and have to build that up. But I think, the more that we can really be on that front foot with learning and outsourcing as much as possible. I think that's a really good thing, because otherwise, I really love working with teams. I really love doing anything that's neuroscience and psychology based, the actual, all the admin behind the business and that kind of thing. I just find that really not just hard, but just energy draining. So just do what is a good, not just return on investment, but what is the return on your energy.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I've heard of a couple of people call it the ROE, the return on energy, right? When you what you're
Yeah,
putting in versus what you're getting back out. And so
exactly.
take us into a little bit like when challenges come your way, and obviously they do and continue to do both professionally and personally. Like when you've got a, sort of challenge, take me through the process. Like, do you have a ritual or a process, or, do you journal? Like, what do you do when a challenge comes your way? How do you break that down as you address that particular challenge?
Yeah, and actually, this is one of the key tools that we teach people as part of our workshops. And people will use it different ways, but I have been using this in life for many years. I used it with my team in financial services, and it's a big part of our accountability frameworks. But we call it jump in the car. So CAR stands for what can we change, what can we accept, and what do we need to remove. And I think with this one, sometimes we're too quick to kind of sort of blame other people and what other people need to do. Whereas I always want people to look inside and go, look, things aren't always going to go according to plan, but what can we change and what would we do differently next time so that we can avoid that happening again? Or what can we change because we've learnt from something this time? I think that's another thing, seeing it as a mindset shift of, okay, there's probably something to learn in here, some way, shape, or form. So what can we change? What do we just need to accept? And I think that's probably a bigger one, because there's a lot of things that we just can't control. So how do we work out what we can do something about and what we can't do something about? And the quicker we go into just accepting things, like I still remember in the global financial crisis, I asked for the targets to be revised down and I was met with a resounding no. So I could have spent a lot of energy being annoyed by that. But given that the answer was no and it was not likely to change, the quicker I went to in that acceptance phase, and then just went, right, okay, what are we doing that's working really well? What do we do more of? What do we change? How do we put that energy into actually doing the work and what needs to be done to get those results? So often we can't control things. And the more times that we spend just whinging about it or being upset about that, then that's not energy well spent. So the quicker you can accept the things that you can't control, the better. And then remove, there's so many things that we can do to remove ourselves from a situation, or we could remove other people, we can remove a system, a process, things like that. So it's that constant reflection and working with all of those. And I think as well, like there's not in life, not everything's going to go according to plan. And sometimes just some sucky things happen. But having that mindset of there is always a solution, and what is helpful thinking? What is helpful about this? Let's create a process. How are we going to deal with this? So, it could be any health issues that people have had. Luckily, I'm pretty good so far, but I know that other friends that have had health issues, and it's like, well, what's the plan? Let's be helpful about this. And so it doesn't matter whether it's really dealing with things in business or things personally, just think helpfully. It doesn't have to be toxic positivity. We don't have to shovel sunshine over stuff that happens that's really sucky. But how do we actually deal with that by being helpful? There is always a solution, and let's jump in the car.
Beautiful. I love that analogy. I love that little car thing. Let's jump in the car. All the things you've achieved, Vanessa, what's next? What are some of the aspirations you have, both personally or professionally, 5, 10, 20 years out, whatever the time frame you want to take us into?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, hopefully it is for a long time. We'll see how we go on that one, but I am in this for the long haul. I think the next stage in our business for us is we're really looking to, I guess, kind of work with a lot of other coaches and a lot of other companies from a scale perspective. Alex, who's my business partner, we really love delivering. So we're not out there just trying to bring in other coaches to deliver and that's it. We really want to work with other people who are running great businesses and to be like sort of a train the trainer kind of model for them as well, because we believe that everyone on the planet deserves to learn how to achieve more with less effort, less burnout, all of these kind of things. We're very, very passionate about looking at high performance without burnout. I'm working in financial services for so long. I saw so many people get burnt out even before it was really labeled as a thing. And it was just unnecessary. And now we just have so much more research and so much more neuroscience on how do we really perform so well, but how do we do that without burnout? And we just believe that so many more people have access to this. So we've already started working with coaches who are running great businesses who just want to add all of these, I guess, kind of like all of the workshops and the IP that we've put together over the years, all based on neuroscience, to add that to their kit bag. We're also finding there's quite a few companies who are working with us who realize how important it is to stay on top of culture and to be running kind of these workshops almost like as a bit of a revision as well, but they don't necessarily want to pay us to come in and do that every time. So we're now doing a train the trainer approach where they now have access to being able to have our IP and then be able to deliver that internally via a few people based internally. So that's probably what's next for us in terms of making sure that the message can get out there to the wider globe. So we're pretty excited about that at the moment. And then obviously Alex and I still love doing what we do as well.
Yeah, awesome. I always find it really fascinating, not only because there's been a rise of talking about mental wellness, but but it's always really great when, business leaders or entrepreneurs are listening to a podcast where they go, I'm really wanting to work on my mental health and mental wellness. And so I know that you're into fitness, and so I'm sure this will come up potentially in this answer as well. But what are your rituals? What do you do to manage your mental wellness?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we basically follow what we preach on this one. So, I mean, even in our materials that we have that we work with clients, we have 3 workshops just on helping people to master the foundations of performance mindset, but really then build that mental fitness and then build that psychological capital so that they really are ready for anything. Whatever comes your way, you are ready for anything. So we put a lot of that into practice as well. We need to practice what we preach and live by that. I think for me personally, the things that work well in terms of my rituals, obviously I do exercise. So for me, a healthy body equals a healthy brain. And I've always felt that way. I just didn't have the neuroscience to back it up. Now we have so much more research coming out about the benefits of movement on brain function, neurochemicals, that can be released to help with our mood and to help us to effectively be in a position to build that psychological capital. So definitely exercise for me is a good thing. From the specific mental fitness training, I have kind of rituals where I focus on breathing. First thing in the morning is just deep breaths. Making sure the phone is nowhere near in reach of my bed. I have a great little old-fashioned alarm clock to make sure that I wake up just to that, and then I do a couple of stretches, a little bit of deep breathing. By that stage, my dog is usually wanting a cuddle on top of me as well, so I cuddle him for about 5 minutes, and then get up and get into the day. I also have I use my walking with my dogs. I've now got 2. When I'm walking with the doggos, that's then my trigger to do some gratitude work. So what went well today? What is going well so far? What am I looking forward to? What am I really grateful for? So that I'm constantly making sure that I'm having just really, I guess, kind of specific space in my day to make sure that I'm focusing on that, because otherwise it's not something that just happens automatically. So that's kind of the trigger for me to do that, and I love creating that habit, and that feels pretty good to me. And I also have what I call a to-do list, where as soon as I just do stuff, I just literally write it down. So it doesn't need to be that something is completed. It does mean that something has been moved forward. So often we don't give ourselves any credit for that 80% of the work that we have done. We're still focused on it's not done, therefore I've done nothing. And that's really detrimental to our mindset as well. And then I also want to make sure that I've got the mindset of like, okay, I might not have the answer now, but I will figure it out. Because the more that we tell ourselves we're tired, we're busy, we're stressed, we're tired, we're busy, we're stressed, that has a really negative impact on the brain. In terms of, basically being detrimental to resilience and basically switching on our overactive stress response, even when it's not really warranted. And that then impacts productivity and things like that. So it's how do I make sure that I've got those little triggers in my day, the to-do list, the walking the dogs and being grateful, the breathing, and then obviously the exercise as well.
Yeah, beautiful. That's fantastic. And Vanessa, if people want to follow you, your work, some of the things that you're creating waves in, where are the best places to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is probably the best to get a bit of an overview of our philosophy around high performance without burnout. And that is nextevolutionperformance.com. So fairly straightforward to find us then. And my main platform that I'm on social media wise is LinkedIn. So I'm under Vanessa Bennett at Next Evolution Performance on that as well. I'm pretty easy to stalk there. So I put out a lot of great content that's just free and accessible to people. So by all means, stop by LinkedIn and follow me there. And we also put a newsletter out. So if you go to the insights page of our website, which is that nextevolutionperformance.com, go to insights, and we have a weekly newsletter full of things in terms of articles that we put out. We put out one pretty good article a week. And it's all based on things that have come up with clients. Obviously, for confidentiality, we don't mention any of our client names or anything like that. But it could have been a workshop, it could have been a coaching program. There's generally some themes that are coming up, and we tend to address those. So if you've got the question, chances are somebody else has already had the question first, and that's prompted us to write something about it. So that's another great place.
That is beautiful. So grateful to have you on today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Great to speak with you, Shivani. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Engage and Retain People podcast. I hope that today's podcast sparks a new and maybe one idea that you can bring back to your business right away. Take time to connect, listen, and invest in your people because they are your most valuable asset. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and business leaders. And don't forget to leave a review. It helps us manage and reach more people just like you. Join us next week for more actionable insights to keep you on the path to engage and retain your people. Until then, keep going. Keep investing in your people and yourself. This is Shivani. Stay inspired.